Hello, I'm Rachel Nagle with Adventurous Heart, and at the end of June, beginning of July, my husband and I backpacked the High Sierra Trail. Now, when we planned it back in November, we knew we'd have some firsts, such as carrying bear canisters, but we hadn't anticipated the epic snow year of 2017 that would lead to our first deep water crossing, our first time using ice axe and crampons through a snowfield. We had done some vertical ice climbing on a limited basis, so we had a little idea, but really the first time backpacking with ice axes and crampons, and ending up camping in the middle of a snowfield out of necessity. In life, we like to think we are the ones in charge, but in the backcountry, it's evident that Mother Nature is really the one who's in charge. Our plan had been to hike the entire 70 miles of the High Sierra Trail all the way to Mount Whitney. Mother Nature thought otherwise. Travel along with us as we share tips and tricks about our 40-mile hike on the High Sierra Trail from Crescent Meadow to Precipice Lake just below Kaweah Gap in the epic 2017 snow year.
Walking along, there's a nice waterfall here under a big fallen tree. Oh wait, there's Rachel. What are you doing out there?
Watch this! Woo! As you explore, you truly gain an appreciation for these giant sequoia trees. From slides and tunnels to playgrounds, their majestic size is sure to amaze you as you realize just how small you really are. Despite their size, the wood is actually pretty light. Or maybe I'm just that strong. No, I'm guessing the wood is just that light. Yet, these trees are able to cope with so much, such as these 1980 fire scars.
This is how big the sequoias are in Sequoia National Forest, all the way up there. The entryway to the High Sierra Trail from Crescent Meadow.
How big are they?
I don't know, Philip, how big?
Pretty big.
With the size of the giant sequoia trees, you would think they would have huge pine cones like these. However, that's not the case. These belong to the sugar pines. So we were on a search. How big were the pine cones from the giant sequoias? They're actually only the size of the one on the right.
That's about a foot.
How big can they get?
2 foot.
Keep looking.
Phil continued to look for 2-foot sugar pine cones all the way to Merton Creek. But the biggest he found was about 16 to 18 inches. Instead, he found awesome views along the way.
What do you have to say about this?
It's breathtaking. I don't know how much of that's the mountains, but it's definitely breathtaking.
Merton Creek. Roaring. This is where we're crossing. And that's where it continues. All the way to beautifulness.
As we left our first deep-water crossing, we passed a group of pack mules. Not much further down the trail, we'd experience another first. What I initially thought was a hiker dressed in black, leaving the trail and going uphill, turned out to be, yes, a bear. Our first bear in the backcountry. Surprisingly, it had heard us and cut up the hill, but it continued to stare at us as it was 100 to 200 feet away, but never in an intimidating way. So we continued on the trail as it passed above us, making sure to continue to talk to it the entire way. 20 minutes down the trail was camp. A little nervous that the bear might visit again, we made sure to follow bear protocol to a T that night. Luckily, the only visitors were a couple of deer. After a refreshing water crossing to start the morning, we followed a well-marked trail past Buck Creek Canyon and Bear Paw Meadow, two great campsites with bear lockers. The rest of the day would be spent taking in beautiful scenery and, of course, having tons of fun along the way. We continued to see rushing water and our first snow bridge, something foreshadowing what was to come the next day. Throughout the trip, I was surprised just how close the trail was to the edge. Definitely not a trail for those afraid of heights. But the breathtaking view of snow-covered mountains towering over a glacier lake with marmots and deer roaming freely make today's backpack well worth it.
So tomorrow morning, we're gonna go over here, cross this really cold, like 37-degree water where your feet tingle when they come out. Go up here, kind of follow this around, head north, and then back east, and then cross over up here, all the way around.
Slowly working your way up, so you'll be a little bit lower than the
to
top.
Hamilton Creek, and then Hamilton Creek. This is Eagle Scout. Just below Eagle Scout is Precipice Lake, which will probably still be frozen. Through here to Kaweah Gap, and then off to the other side.
Sounds easy enough for day 3, right? Not quite. This would prove to be one of our most tasking days in the backcountry, which started with a long, cold, deep water crossing. Within 20 minutes, we came to our first snowfield. Most had decided to bushwhack through the trees to avoid it, but since this was, in fact, our first time using ice axes and crampons, we decided to spend 45 minutes practicing using them to make sure we knew what we were doing, and, of course, doing a few mock self-arrests, just in case. And this was on what turned out to be the second steepest section we would be on during the entire trip. The steepest section would be our second snowfield ever, the 45 to 50-degree slope of Hamilton Gorge. Just looking at Hamilton Gorge makes you want to turn around. But the thirst for adventure, by me at least, and the fact we had brought our ice axes and crampons motivated us to cross. We took a few precautions, of course, such as making sure to carve out our steps without our backpacks on first. It made crossing with backpacks much easier, but that meant we had to cross it 3 times instead of just 1. Carving steps in solid ice at 8:30 in the morning left our legs screaming with exhaustion, but the adrenaline kept us going. For me, crossing Hamilton Gorge was one of the most thrilling things I'd ever done. I made sure to stop in the middle to take in the view, a moment and a feeling I'll never forget. Phil will never forget it either, more so because he about had a panic attack and refused to look down. I had offered to go back to get his backpack, so he only had to cross it once. And I could tell he was strongly considering this option. But he knew if we were to advance any further, he needed to do this. Even though to him, crossing Hamilton Gorge felt more like this. On the other side, we were both filled with relief and motivated to get to Whitney because we didn't want to have to cross this again. The rest of the day would be filled with more physical and mental fatigue than we had originally anticipated, as we crossed 12 snowfields just far enough apart that you'd have to repetitively put your crampons on, get your ice axe out, put trekking poles away, and repeat. The added snowfields meant trails disappeared as well, so wayfinding became necessary. One cool thing that did happen, though, was we weren't real sure where to go. We looked at the maps and the GPS, and we had a general idea, but we were still trying to find those stacked rocks that kind of showed where the trail was. As we were looking around, we saw a marmot who'd been watching us, and even came up and licked our ice axes as we were filtering water. And he ran across the snow to another set of rocks, and then back towards us. Coincidentally, it had shown us where the trail was. Thanks, Marmot. The rest of the day was a strange, intense feeling all day long, as we realized not only would we not make it to Moraine Lake as we had intended, but we wouldn't even make it to Big Arroyo, which was the first campsite we'd come across that day. With an hour of sunlight left, we came to the biggest snowfield of the day, near Precipice Lake. My backup plan was to camp there, but deep, steep snow said otherwise. Again, Mother Nature always makes those decisions for us. We would eventually camp on a mostly flat rock about a half mile and 400 feet below Kaweah Gap, where we boiled snow for water. Despite all of this, that night was one of my favorite in the backcountry. Now we had to decide if we'd continue on to Whitney despite all of the snow conditions, or if we would turn back towards Hamilton Gorge.
So there's where we started yesterday, at Hamilton Lake. We traversed the trail up. You can see the trail there. Circled around to Hamilton Gorge, which is that sketchy 45-degree angle. Continued our way up, met quite a few snowfields, as you can see here. Crossed them, and there is the small lake below Precipice Lake. Precipice Lake is just behind us. You can't see it. It's kind of underneath. And it was about 8:30 by the time it took us to hike 14 hours to hike 3 miles, starting to get dark. So we looked for a campsite and we found this gem on a rock as we were walking through. You can see our footprints in the snow here. So we were walking through, gonna head over there to try to get to Kaweah Gap, which is still about 400 feet up there. Weren't sure what we could find, so we found this butte of a rock right here, and this was camp for the night. Actually really enjoyable, really nice. Relatively flat, a little bit of cliff on the other side, but a good place to rest our weary heads, and a great supply of snow. It's where we got our snow to boil some water. So good day, good night. I think we're gonna head back down, turn around. Whitney's not in our game plan for this trip, maybe next time.
With the pressure to make it to Mount Whitney in time for our scheduled shuttle pickup gone, and being our second day using crampons and ice axes, we were feeling much more comfortable and relaxed, and really started to enjoy everything the mountain had to offer.
What are you doing there? What's going on? What's going on up there? Ah!
Oh, bad shot.
Oh, it feels pretty good actually. What are you doing over there, H?
What are you doing on the mountain in shorts and a t-shirt? Nothing else but a snow angel.
But that feels refreshing.
So good. I'm gonna regret it later. Oh, I love it! I love it! I love it!
Woo!
Oh, I love the snow in the summer. It's so great. Ah.
It does feel nice. It's like 80 degrees right now.
To our surprise, it took less than half the time to make it back to Hamilton Lake, which left us wondering if perhaps we should have persevered to make it to Mount Whitney. The only other person we saw past Hamilton Gorge confirmed that our decision was indeed a good one, as he said that on the other side you had to navigate around snow boulders from an old avalanche, and that the mosquitoes in the meadow were absolutely miserable. At Hamilton Gorge, Phil was reminded of the sky. As I had my ice axe and crampons on, ready to cross Hamilton Gorge, Phil noticed no new footprints, and he was convinced that there had to be another way. He didn't really want to cross on top again. After some investigation, he realized that you could indeed go under the snowfield next to the waterfall.
So Phil didn't love the idea of climbing on top of Hamilton Gorge again, so he was creative and saw that there might be an option underneath, because we saw another hiker who didn't have his footprints on top, so we said, maybe. It's a tight fit, but we went under it this time. I know it's a little hard to see, but you fit through here, come around, you hit some water that's flowing under it that has made it. So this right here is actually the original trail. That's the trail where the water flow is going over, and this is above. So you can actually get through here again. So as we come through, it opens quite a bit, and you can see it goes down. I'm gonna get my footing here. So I'm on the trail. You can see it gushing up, coming through there, all the way down. And then it continues on the trail through there. So we're under where you would cross with the raging waters. Sounds worse than it is. Come through. Stay nice and low because you might hit your head. And ice hurts. You come through and you made it on the other side.
Tunnel.
And you did not have to cross across the top. Right there, like we did yesterday. And you may ask, how the heck, or why the heck, would you have gone on top? That was our only option at the point, or so we thought.
The rest of the way to Crescent Meadow was relatively relaxing and uneventful. We took the Sequoia shuttle back to Visalia and ventured to San Diego for a fun surf lesson. I encourage you to reward yourself after your trip as well. I'll leave you with some additional tips and tricks to help you plan your next adventure.